Welcome back to Let Us In Podcast. Today we're discussing one of the best directors, modern directors of horror today, Mike Flanagan. Now, we coined a term way back called Flanastans. That has become popular, so I don't know if it's because of us. I'm not going to say that because I think everybody can come to that conclusion, but we are Flanastans.
The biggest. At least me.
The biggest.
I'm Emma, aka Emma of the Impact.
I'm Crystal, creeping it spooky.
I'm Justine, aka JustineUFF, and today we have our special guest, haunting season, as Josh.
Hi,
Not
that's
Brian.
me.
We have a guest not
Otherwise
named
known
Brian.
as Brian.
We have a guest not named Brian this time. Are you guys proud? We've grown.
We've
have-
expanded our network. So,
Hashtag.
fun story. Haunting season is actually the reason why I started making content. He was one of the first people I followed on TikTok. I fell in love with his style, the way that he told ghost stories, and I just got really into it. Anytime he asked for Rex, I would be in his comment section blasting him with Rex to the point where I'm sure he was like, oh my God, how do I get this chick off my comment section? Go make your own content, Justine. And so I did. And here we are.
Yeah, and then
So-
I became a fan of you.
So you can all blame him.
Yeah,
It's good to
Look
put a
how funny
face
you
to the
sound.
anger.
I love it. No, I love when someone has something to actually say and then they get to go do that thing. Video production is not for everybody. It's really hard. I'm just like really proud of you as a friend that like you were able to go from like just being a nerd who had like tons of lists to be like you're a content creator now. It's so awesome.
Yeah. And then I met these wonderful ladies, and together we have one of what I think is the better podcasts out there talk about horror. And I don't mean that to be like self braggy. We're trying to offer different perspectives around horror. And yeah, I wouldn't have been here at all if it wasn't for you encouraging me to do so. Thank you.
And I wouldn't be
Yeah.
here at all if you didn't invite me. So
Full circle. No, you have some
Circle.
projects coming up, correct?
I do. I always have projects coming up. I live a video production life. It's my day job and my night hobby. I always have something I'm working on. I have a whole bunch of stuff that I can talk about, a whole bunch of stuff I can't talk about yet.
Let's start with the can talk about stuff.
Yeah, that's probably the most productive. A little history of myself. I started haunting season in 2013 on YouTube as a way to write my own scary stories. There was no real horror content on YouTube at the time. Creepypasta was just starting to become a thing. I'm a guy who lives his
neither.
life with joy, and a lot of my joy comes from horror. So I'm gonna spit out a bunch of bullshit that nobody can really track back to anything legit other than my own feelings. So
You just
creepypasta was
described
just
what it's
becoming
like
a thing.
being a critic online. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, go on.
I will
And
also specify that I am not a critic. I'm not a critic of anything because the
and
only thing I share is my
a lover,
opinion.
a professional appreciator.
A professional appreciator. I'm not professional either. You got it all wrong, Emma. No, but creepypasta was like the one horror thing happening on YouTube, and there wasn't much else. And I didn't want to tell other people's stories. I didn't want to tell folklore. I didn't want to tell stories that have been passed through the internet. I wanted to write something original, and so I did, and it went pretty well. I got like 16,000 followers over 2 years, which at the
That's
time was
the
like
dream.
pretty cool. And I thought, that's it. I did my thing. Life got busy. I went through a divorce. I moved across the country. I started this company that I'm working at. And it just became this thing of the past that I thought about every single day of my life as this. I remember doing that. Man, that was so much fun. That was so fulfilling. It was like 7 years went by and our company started really being successful. We basically tell patient stories and do documentary work. And we were like, how do we get our feet back in the door in entertainment? And so we were like pitching each other ideas. And I was like, there's still 16,000 people like asking where the hell I went. Cause I just like ghosted the channel. It's like the worst thing I ever did, but I just had to leave. And I was like so embarrassed because of all the circumstances around it. And it just like left. And then I just felt guilt the rest of my life for 7 years. And so
For 7 years.
yeah, the rest of my life for 7 years. And so then I pitched it as a podcast and we did that for a little while. And then that kind of brought the YouTube show back and that got me back into writing scary stories. And then TikTok came into my life and that's where people have flocked to. And that kind of content has been like, I'm at like 350,000 followers right now. It just feels like it just happened overnight, which it didn't. I put a lot of hard work in, but it feels like I snapped my fingers and I went from being like 16,000 people listening to a story I wrote is the most famous I will ever get in my entire life. And now like this past weekend, because one video that I posted that went viral, I gained 50,000 followers in 24 hours.
Whoa.
I couldn't
so-
even imagine. That's so
It's-
incredible.
I still can't process it. I've been
Yeah.
texting
Story
with the
was
guy. It was, I just shouted out my friend Mike. I met him on Instagram early on in the pandemic. He was doing urban exploring stuff, and he had a
That looks really cool. The
Charm City
documentary.
Paranormal.
Yeah, that looks awesome.
So he was doing urban exploring, and he was just into finding abandoned places and taking photos of them. And he had a paranormal experience for the first time in his life.
Wow.
He didn't grow up liking horror movies. He didn't grow up thinking about ghosts. He was just a normal guy who was interested in like finding abandoned places. Something really creepy happened, and he was like, I want to know more. And he became this paranormal investigator. And his video production, it's all just like mind-blowingly good. And he had like 600 followers on YouTube, and he was making these 90-minute documentaries about places with like full history and like real evidence. It was just so
Yeah.
exciting. I've been shouting his stuff out over the past year or so, and this last one just caught, and it has like almost 5 million views on the video that I did. He went from having, this past weekend, went from having 3,000 subscribers to now he's got like over 40,000.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's unbelievable. We've just been texting each other nonstop, like 24 hours a day for like 3 days. I'm like, dude, what is happening? No, what is happening? It's wild. It's wild. I
That's
don't
incredible.
understand this life that I'm in right now.
That's super cool. Yeah. Wow.
And
feel
you're
like
going to
we're
be
in
starting a
the-
podcast, correct? Can you talk about
Yeah,
that?
we can get back to the actual question you asked me. Yeah, I did the podcast for a while. I had to put it on hold because haunting season, when I brought it back, because I brought it back through work, I've got a couple of partners that I work on it with. The whole goal of haunting season from the beginning was not to tell scary stories on YouTube. It was to build it into Blumhouse, kind of, but not Blumhouse because they've
Right.
gone off the rails a little. But
Well,
like,
let's just trash Jason Blum, who we're
oh,
going
I think he's
I'm joking, I'm
super
joking.
passionate. No,
I'm
but
a teaser. I'm a teaser. So
I know,
don't
but I
mind
gotta
me.
back up my words. I think he is a super passionate guy, and I think he truly loves what he does. And I've seen him speak in person about it, and there's just like a
Mhm.
glow in his eyes. But I think when you grow to a certain level, like you want to continue growing, and at a certain point, you start accumulating properties that aren't at the same level as when you started, because you're growing and you're allowing other people to have their voices. So I think now, I don't see the name Blumhouse and think like this is going to be a special treat. I think like, is this going to be a good one or a bad one? You know what I mean?
That's true. We have
Yeah.
done quite a bit of B horror from Blumhouse.
I
which
wouldn't
is
call it being
great.
so picky.
You'll get used to it, Josh.
You know, she doesn't even know full moon, Josh
Full moon?
Bryan. Full moon feet.
Yeah.
I love me some Charles Band.
Yeah.
It's kind of fortuitous that you're coming onto the podcast for this particular episode, since Flanagan seems to be such a lover of horror and kind of came up on films like Absentia and short films. He started in short films, of course. So you could see that he's got this love and passion for filmmaking. I think that that's what stands him out from the rest, in my opinion. So
Yeah.
it's good that we're going to get your insight on that as someone who's gone through the whole film end-to-end production of it all.
It's a
Yeah.
similar story, and I find it inspiring in the sense that Flanagan was working late nights, doing a lot of TV editing, and his wife at the time had just gotten pregnant in their first kid, and he thought, damn, if I'm ever going to make a movie, I got to do it now. And that's when Absentia happened. But
We're going to do reverse release date.
Orders.
Who's the oldest?
Don't hold us to it, because we'll just start talking about whatever we talk about after a while.
so that would be, since Midnight Club isn't just out yet, and neither is Follow the House of Usher. We're going for Midnight Mass. Is that right?
Midnight
That's
Mass.
correct. So this episode will drop the day of Midnight Club.
Oh, I'm so
Ooh.
excited for it. Some
So
Christmas-
that is
I'm
why
trying
we're
not to
doing
know
Flanagan
anything
episode.
about it. I don't know a single thing about it other than it has midnight in it again, which at first
But
made me
they're
be
not
like,
associated.
oh,
No.
or
I won't
are we
spoil
delving
anything
into,
then,
yeah.
since you're keeping it fresh. Besides, Christopher
Yeah.
Pike wrote the story. Christopher
Yeah.
Pike's horror stories.
I feel like
won't
I
say
can
anything
trust
else.
Mike Flanagan enough that I don't need to watch a teaser to get excited for it. I'm excited because it's him.
Yeah. I
This
feel
is one
that.
of my most anticipated drops this year. So
Me too.
just because it's Flanagan, period. Night Mass was so stinking good, and it
So
rocked my
good.
world so much that I've never been able to stop talking about it or referencing it whenever I'm talking
Even though
about
the last
anything. Like,
monologue was a little bit for me.
Why are
a
people
little
complaining about
tad.
monologues?
It's not the
We don't
monologue.
get
so-
'em
anymore.
Okay, whoa. But we are pumping the brakes. I love a juicy monologue. I love how he does this big monologue that kind of wraps up the plot and does this calm epilogue to a lot of his TV series. I love that. I love a lot of talking. I love most of the movies and films that I'm really attracted to were originally from plays. So not a lot of locations, a lot of dialogue. And I love Mike Flanagan. I love Midnight Mass. It's just that particular last monologue because I am me and as an individual who's one of those people. It felt a little bit we are but stardust, like misquoting
every-
Carl Sagan.
How dare they?
Just say no.
Yeah, Midnight Mass, I don't have an issue with any of the monologues. They all hit every note for me. I really liked them. I liked the Stardust thing. I think it added another layer of spirituality to what was very much a religious show. It was very steeped in different religions and opinions and ideas. And I liked that they touched on spirituality from like a cosmic sense. And that was really important to me. And I liked it a lot. I also like when that monologue took place. That is the best episode in the season. To me, that was the episode that ripped my heart out.
They were in the
Yeah.
boat. I loved it when they were in the boat.
That's
and
when
he
that
killing
monologue was
everyone.
happening.
That's that moment.
That's
yeah.
not no. I'm talking about a different monologue. I'm talking about when Kate is passing away. That monologue is the one that bugs me. I just feel like I'm a part of everything and all things. That one. It's one of the last episodes. It's not the second.
You mean
or
she's
second
like killing the
dying.
vamp, like killing
No,
him?
she is
like,
dying.
I don't even remember that being a monologue.
I do because it bothered me.
I guess I don't remember when you're talking about. I remember her dying, and I
It's
remember
one
her
of the
talking
last
and
ending
stuff, but
monologues.
I didn't realize that was a monologue.
Basically, it felt like one, but it was
Okay. I
it's
just don't remember it
basically
as
kind
one, so
of
maybe
like
that's
it's
why it didn't
making
bother
this
me.
closure to the idea that they will all pass away so the children may live. I love the stuff going on in the boat and the moment
And the
between the
couch.
two of them.
They all felt
Couch
tied.
moment, Yes.
It felt like she was very much in a spiritual sense thinking about, again, the greater good, the cosmos. Like that seemed to be like a tie-in to those conversations. But that was the monologue I thought you were talking about, because she definitely talks about stars and like space and
They just
like
talk about stars a lot in that show. and
going
I'm
back,
accepting it.
when you die and how you go back into the world and how you impact each other.
I don't know. I'm into it because I just watched Surviving Death on Netflix. The first episode of that is stories of people who died for like over 30 minutes and came back in like really bizarre circumstances. And there was like a euphoria, like thing that happens when you like transcend your body and everything. So I don't know. I feel like anybody when they die is going through some hippie bullshit. You are
Is it
just
called
tripping out
DMT
and you're
or
like, the
something?
stars are the stars, and like
I
us
guess it
people are
takes
just
30
stars.
minutes.
And
I was only medically dead for 3, so what can I say?
show off.
What is that
I am
movie,
showing off.
Flatliners, where they
I
talk
was
about
dead for
DMT?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, Flatliners, where like they want to see if there's an afterlife, and then they discuss actively like in how
Look with the visuals.
and how your brain releases like certain chemicals and stuff, DMT, which can cause you to have like euphoric kind of out of this body, out of this world like high that could be anything. Like people experience it in different ways, and that's what they explain to be what the afterlife or seeing light at the end of the tunnel could be. Back to Midnight Mass.
I love how the show took a lot of time to really get into all the spookier, more of faster paced plot lines, that we really got to know this small island of a town, and we really got to get a sense for how blighted it was and how it needed something. It felt like something like a light had been missing from it, didn't it?
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
those coastal settings.
It reminded me a lot of Stephen King books that I read when I was growing up, where they're like 800 pages and you don't really get any horror until like page 600, but you're like so in love with the characters by then that anything that happens, you're just guaranteed to be devastated.
Yeah, he's so good at displaying grief and trauma through horror. And I think the only horror you really experience up until the turning of events is his trauma from what he experienced with that car accident, that drinking and driving car accident that he had. Those were some of the most haunting. They reminded me of Haunting of Hill House a lot. The way like, he looked so calm and used to it, like he was so used to seeing this imagery. That one scene where he's lying on his bed, where he just got home, and it goes sideways, the camera goes sideways to him where he's laying on the bed. Suddenly, it's like slow zoom in. It has this beautiful music playing,
It's like a
and
boat
you
tilting
see the
over
like
slowly.
police. Yeah, and then you see the police lights going off on his face, and like beautiful music is still playing, very calming. His face is very like without emotion, apathetic. And then it cuts to that her body there with like windshield glass in her head and stuff. And she's just standing there and she's just in his room with him. There's no police cars, but she's lit up by police cars. So terrifying. I don't even remember there being a loud sound or anything, but it was shocking. Oof, that scene. That really set the tone, I think, for the show.
Yeah. It continued to hit hard.
Yep, after that, it
Somehow.
was just downhill. Like,
Yeah.
and the eeriness of something watching you through the windows, which
Mm.
he touches really well on in Hush too. The
Mhm.
idea that like when it's dark outside and it's light in your house, you can't see what's out there, but it can see you just fine. That's
Yeah.
so scary.
Yeah, I never understand these people in these movies who don't have shutters or blinds or
Yeah.
Or a
Emma's
nice
got the
Yeah.
right
window
idea
shade.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little broken, but
It does
it's
the
hiding
trick.
anything spooky.
You just have that
Nothing's.
little slit there so you can see if something walks by.
Now I'm going to see eyes there.
Oh
This is
It,
second
yeah.
floor,
it
so it would
trips
have
me
to be
out
something
every time we
spooky.
film. Every time we film, I'll see a
Yeah.
car go by and it'll just be this little light that goes across. I'm like,
That's what you think it is.
just monsters. Josh,
But this
did
is
you?
another. Sorry.
Josh, did you know that this was going to be a vampire show?
No, I avoided everything going
Me
into
too.
this one, and I was pretty shocked. I think I guessed it like when he wanted you to guess it. I feel
Yeah.
like everyone gets so proud of themselves that they like guess the ending, but I just feel like 80% of the time the director's like, now's when I want the audience to think they know what it is, and now's when
Mhm.
I'm going to reveal it. And I felt like that it
Yeah.
was just so perfectly done.
Yeah. I agree.
I had no clue until the cave scene.
Yeah, exactly.
No clue.
Yeah.
I had heard rumors that Flanagan was going to be doing Stephen King adaptation revival. And so for me, I thought, oh, then that must have fallen through, but he still wanted to do, is this like a version of it? Like, is this his adaptation, but we're not going to call it revival? Because it was all about this priest and like people were being saved. And I was like, this
Mm.
feels like revival. So I thought there was going to be some like freaky religious stuff going on, but I had no clue whatsoever. And I remember being so blown away that I immediately went to social media and was like, you have to watch this show before it's spoiled.
Mm.
One word.
Because we're
Yeah.
One
spoiling it
word is
right
gonna
now,
ruin
but,
it.
like, the word
Yeah.
vampire, yes. I remember when all the cats were dead. It's like I have no idea what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Like,
thought it
they're,
was they were
like,
sucking the
dead.
life out of him or something.
Yeah.
Like, not literally.
I'm like,
I was
why,
gonna say,
why cats? It's got to be a dog, right? Ooh, it's a werewolf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where my mind was going.
Do you
I was
remember the
going
show
with,
Carnival?
because they had
No.
started. Oh, Carnival is a great show. Oh my god.
That's what I thought was going on. I thought that's what was happening.
I thought it was something
Like
like that
Carnival.
too with the girl that had
Yeah.
that he had healed. I thought it was going to be a thing like that with Carnival.
And that's what happened with the cats. That's what I thought. I thought he healed
Which,
her,
For
killed the
those who
cat.
haven't seen Carnival, doesn't really
So
have an
good.
ending, but Clancy Brown
Yeah.
looking manly in it.
Wait, looking what?
manly in it. Good, looking good, being powerful Clancy Brown-ish, loving it too much. Anyway,
That's what I thought it was going to be. No.
it's a night where there's a character who's not Clancy Brown who can give life or heal something, but to do that he has to take life from something or energy from something else. So there's a price to be paid.
Like
I
a
thought
field
that's
of
what it was gonna
flowers
be.
would just die if he healed somebody.
Oh, cool.
And if he brought someone back to life, somebody else's life would have to be taken, sort of thing. It was a show that
Yeah.
never was given a proper ending, but it has so many great actors in it that you would. Have you seen it, Joss?
No, I haven't seen a single.
Oh, it's
no.
so
Great
good. It's
show.
worth watching, even though it doesn't really have a proper ending. Not just
We're
'cause
just bracing
Clancy
your
Brown's
heart
a
for it. But...
What was it on
And-
HBO?
Yeah,
it was an
yeah.
HBO
Yeah,
show.
so
I
hopefully
have
it's
the-
something they don't delete permanently.
I have the box set. I don't know.
I know. Sorry, I didn't
Breaking
mean to
my
bring that
heart.
up.
Midnight Mass was going to be that. Like, it was going to be like revival, Stephen King revival meets Carnival. That's what I was expecting going in. Then the boat scene happened and the cave happened. And I was just like,
I'm sorry.
what is happening here? That boat scene ripped my heart out. Because
It was just heart wrenching, like you said. It sent me. I was not expecting it, and then
It was so romantic at first.
It was. It felt like kind of like Little Mermaid, like kiss the girl, but no.
No.
It was the
My heart
opposite
sank
direction.
because there
Kiss the
was
girl
a tone
quickly,
in the
please.
air. Yeah, quickly,
Very.
as you not got much time before that sun rises.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was you felt it. You knew it was gonna happen. I shouldn't say that. I figured what was gonna happen. You just feel the tone of it that it was gonna be a goodbye.
I don't
What-
know that I didn't know up until that point that they would burn in the sun. We didn't know that.
No,
We
I didn't know
just-
exactly
yeah.
how, but it was one of those. I
Right.
didn't know exactly
You
what
knew
was gonna
something
happen.
dire was
but
happening.
It felt like
I
it was
thought he
gonna
was
be a
gonna
goodbye.
tell her.
No, it felt like a goodbye. I didn't know exactly how or what, but I felt like a goodbye to me.
Just wanted to know what everybody's favorite vampire movie was. Like,
Lost
does
Boys?
this make it in there for anybody here?
Oh, yeah. If
Yeah.
we're counting shows, this is at the top. Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Well,
or
is this one of your
Byzantium.
favorite vampire movie shows?
I'd say it's up there, but I recently just saw Afflicted and it blew my freaking
Mm.
mind. So
Oh,
that might be
really?
my favorite now.
That's one of mine too. Yeah.
Good.
That's found
Any
footage.
found
More so than
footage.
Lost Boys?
Yes.
Yes. Give me all the fan footage.
I don't know, it just was so good. But I don't know. I have a tendency to like things that I watch recently, like rank really high, but
I'm
then
the
they
same
start
way.
to sink in the quicksand.
I have
of
the
it all.
opposite problem. I like hate everything, and then I realize I'm stupid. That was amazing. That's my problem.
That's only
Uh,
happened to me a couple of times. Like it happened with Babadook. The first time I watched Babadook, I was like, "What is this garbage movie?" And then I watched it a couple of years later, and I was like, "This is brilliant."
For me, it's rewatchability is like the number one factor in whether something ranks high for me. And I rewatch Bram Stoker's Dracula and Byzantium the most. I watch those all the time.
I gotta do that. Bram Stoker's Dracula. I think I have it up here somewhere.
It is a master class in film editing and making.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't say
It's
that,
lovely,
although much
yeah.
as I love it, a brilliant Tom Waits performance as Renfield. Love that for him.
That whole film was all the effects were done in camera. So it was done while filming. It was in camera effects, not post production. Anywho, we're not here to talk. Midnight Mass, I think, introduced a lot of people to Mike Flanagan more than even Haunting of Hill House did. Because the show, I don't think a lot of people knew what it was when they were getting into it or even knew who Mike Flanagan was. I know a lot of people who their first Flanagan feature that they watched turned out that they knew that they were watching Mike Flanagan, that they were like, what is this, man? Was Midnight Mass. It's like his big, I think, opus of the year. So it
Mhm.
just brought a lot of people to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is good.
Uh,
It was his passion project, and he had it in the works for so long. He definitely deserves the
So
recognition.
long.
You're right, for a very
So
long
long.
time, for a lot of things, and he had
We'll
said
see
I
it
think
that
we
pop
have
up
the Easter
several
egg.
times as we go
Yeah.
on.
I was gonna
Yeah,
say we
after-
got some Easter eggs.
after he
Yeah.
had directed all the episodes of Hill House and lost something like over 20 pounds just by being so
45.
stressed and being a 25 and being so
45.
stressed. 40. Oh my God. He doesn't
Yeah.
have 45 pounds to lose. Oh my goodness. No, I don't making comments about people's bodies. Gain or lose, whatever you want. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
a lot to lose in a short period
It
of
is.
that short
Yeah.
period of time, even though it took a while to shoot. But I shouldn't direct every episode again. And then he did it with Midnight Mass because it meant so much to him.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was just looking at the IMDb because I know Bly Manor's coming up next, and I was shocked to see they only did one episode
Yeah.
as the
It was that Hill
director.
House stressed him out so much. I mean, in the
Mhm.
best way, but he was rightfully saying, I can only do, because he edits everything as well.
Oof.
He's one of those writers, directors, editors.
Uh-huh.
He does a lot. Yeah.
I can't
He's a busy guy.
imagine. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
There's a quote that I love from Joel Schumacher, actually, and he's like, everybody that makes and finishes a movie deserves an Academy Award, and I agree with that. It's just so hard to make a movie and
Yeah.
finish it, no
It
matter.
really-
It's just so
really
hard.
is.
You would know. You work on documentaries and such.
I know. The one example I have is my boss and I started shooting. So we have a documentary that's on Discovery Plus right now called My Beautiful Stutter. It follows 5 young people who stutter and their experience going to this camp for young people that stutter that is controversial because it encourages them to embrace it as opposed to work towards correcting it, because it's not really something you can correct, or not.
Mm.
That's not true for everybody. We shot that for 6 years. And then we edited it for probably 4 before we started shopping it around for
wow.
like 2 years until eventually it got on Discovery Plus. And the people who
Holy.
we started
Is it
filming
there
in the
now
very
for folks to
beginning,
watch?
it is, yeah.
What's it called?
It's called My Beautiful Stutter. It's really powerful. There are just raw moments. The whole thing is the stuttering community wants you just to listen. Don't finish their sentences. Don't cut them off. Just listen, because they're a human being with thoughts and feelings, and they just want to be heard the same way that everybody else does. They don't get that often because people just like really abuse anyone who's different in any possible way.
They
Yeah.
infantilize them. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
happens in the blind and deaf community as well. So I have close associations with that. In my 9 to 5, I work for a nonprofit. Anywho, so I'm gonna have to check that out. That sounds really interesting. I'd love to
Yeah.
watch that documentary.
I think it's really important to know that like most people in the film industry don't get there because they studied film. I went to school for musical theater. I just happened to like cameras, and it wasn't until after college, 2 years after college, that someone said to me, like, you're being a filmmaker with all these little things that you're doing. And I got
Yeah.
thrown into a set where they were like, here's a big camera and you're now going to be filming this show that we're doing in New York. And I didn't know anything about it, and I was freaking out. And a nice guy came by who was the DP, and I said, I don't know how to do this. And he was like, it's a camera, it records, it has the same 3 functions as every other camera, it just has a lot of menus inside. And that was the moment I realized that like as long as you're following a passion that you're interested in, like, yeah, you're a producer. Sorry. Hell yeah.
Real quick before we move on to Bly Manor, the creature design was so cool for the vampire in Midnight Mass, and that there's such a great scene with him when he's in the priest robes and like spreads his wings for the like congregation, and just like some of the people's minds changing now at the sight of this beast, and it's like their faith is all of a sudden shaken. That whole scene was so crazy. But like, what's her face? The actress that plays Bev?
Samantha Sloyan.
Yes,
Not the crazy
Samantha
religious lady
Sloyan.
who's really
Yeah.
judgy.
Yeah, so
She's
her, Hamish, the acting on this show is so good.
That was one of
honestly,
my favorite
that's my fa- yeah.
conversations. It wasn't a monologue, but it's when the main actress was talking to the Bev character and said, are you just upset because he loves everyone and not just you?" Something like that. Where
Yeah. And of course, Rahul Kohli, you guys know, is my man.
he's a sexy man, and so is the priest. He's a very talented gentleman.
So, The Haunting of Bly Manor was his second of the Haunting of series, and this one gets a little bit of hate, I think, sometimes.
does.
And I think unjustly. I think people
I would
just
say it
were
gets more
expecting Hill
apathy
House.
than it does hate. Like it's more of an apathy.
Oh, I've
people
heard
thought it
people
would
say
be
that
a
they
lot
really
more
hated it.
I
Yeah.
have
People were
the
expecting
fishbowl
Hill
effect
House
with
level.
me.
Yeah, a lot of people
But
were
I don't know,
expecting
wait.
Hill House.
But I don't know what that means, Hill House level, because literally everything Mike Flanagan does is simultaneously completely different from the thing before, but has his voice in it. I think this was Hill House was such a huge success, and his name was like out there, I think, for the first time in a really big way. And then people skipped over Dr. Sleep because it's Stephen King and The Shining, and there's like a niche audience for that, but I don't think it was the big hit that Hill House was. So Bly Manor to everyone was like his next thing, and everybody's always disappointed, which I don't understand, about the next thing, about the second thing.
I
Like with Jordan
totally
Peele,
agree.
people didn't like Us as much, and it's a
I
completely
loved
different
Us.
film from Get Out, and it's just as good, but it's different, and then people get all pissy about it.
I think
Completely
just
agree.
Hill
It
House.
has to measure up, but then it can't be too the same. It can't be too different. When it should just be judged as its own piece.
Which is why everyone likes the
Yeah.
third thing that the person does, because
like,
then they're
"Well,
like,
it's
we've
better
broken
than
that
Bly
seal.
Manor."
Yeah, exactly.
Like
I
I
just
feel
think
like
Hill
Midnight
House
Mass.
was. I think Hill House was scary, like so scary. And so when Bly Manor came out, people were expecting the second season of like that level of scary.
Or upping
And
the
then it was
ante,
a
even
lot
like
more
a sequel.
drama. Yeah, exactly. So they were
Right.
expecting that level, but they got a little bit more drama, a lot more story. It was still so beautifully done,
Gothic
and it
horror.
felt very Flanagan. Yeah, but it was a little bit of a different level of scary, and people just, I feel like, they weren't expecting that, which is a
I
bummer
agree.
because it was stunning. It was such a beautiful series.
Hill House got scary fast.
Very
Very
fast.
fast. And it's stuck with that scariness for a long time and still managed a
Mhm.
climax. But what he
Yeah.
achieved in that show was completely different than what Bly Manor was, which felt more like a gothic horror over the course of many episodes. So it had much more of a slow burn, much more
Mhm.
character driven, even though I think everything he does is character driven
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
through and through.
Absolutely.
It felt more focused as character driven than anything else because it didn't get scary for a while. Whereas I think you saw more displays of horror even in Midnight Mass earlier on. You still got those moments of like breadcrumbs of horror, and Bly Manor took a little while to give you
Mhm.
something to gnaw on. And
It did.
I love it. I love gothic horrors though.
I
And
feel
when
like it was the reveal, it was the ending that had less of a, I hate saying it this way because it doesn't describe it as well as I wanted to, less of a bang with like, oh, guess what? It was the bent, she was her own bent neck, like bent neck
yeah,
thing the whole time. And it was more of this romance story and a sadness and stillness of death and an erasure of personality, which has its own tones that you had to seep in and settle with, as opposed to, and not that it feels like the ending kind of feels different in that sense.
So glad he did it that way
me too.
because it's so easy in Hollywood to get stuck in a niche. And the whole
Mhm.
thing about horror is that we have 150 different subgenres. You could write horror stories your entire life and they could all be completely different. They could all be
Mhm.
completely different styles of horror. It just kept his door open to like all these different things. And as you look at the IMDb, like you can climb it like a ladder. You can see he improved on every single thing bit by bit as he went up, but he also experimented in like all of these different genres.
Yeah.
Agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Do you think if he came up at the around the same time as like Spielberg, when Hollywood was like much faster and people were just like vomiting money out of their pockets, do you think he would have made like 200 films in
no,
the amount of time that he's made these, or do you think he still would have been a slow and steady kind of Scorsese type?
I don't think he would have gotten
Mhm.
funding.
I think he would have been a little
Mhm.
faster than Scorsese, but not as much as Spielberg. I think he would have been in the middle of that.
I don't know if the skills and technology would have been able to tell the stories that he tells in the way that he can tell them today.
I think so.
But
I think so. I'm completely disagreeing, but I think that since he's so character focused, one thing that which it's interesting because The Haunting, which is in the from the 60s or 50s, great, one of the best horror films, American horror films ever made. The remake, it's not terrible, but it doesn't hold the greatness that the original does. And I think of Hill House, same story, same writer, and
I think he
brilliant.
would have been
It's what happened.
I think he
Oh,
would
there
have
you
had to
go.
tell
I like this game.
I think he
Yeah,
would have
this is
had to
fun.
tell stories more like Kubrick told stories, and he would have had
Oh,
to
well, in visuals, but Kubrick has like no humanism. He is more of a nihilist. He's
that's what I'm
dog
saying.
shit.
Like he would have had to use the skills that Kubrick had available to him, but been character driven. I feel like if he had the funding like Kubrick, he could have been better than Kubrick. But
Mhm.
I don't think he would have gotten the funding,
I
yeah,
don't
to
think
Nia
he would
Miller.
either.
Okay. I loved her arc. I felt her arc to be, I don't know, I felt very empathetic to her story. And I think that was one of the ones that really made me connect with this story. Something that is really amazing about, if you listen to Mike Flanagan on a podcast or an interview or an opening, was Mike Flanagan at any, have you ever seen Mike Flanagan do a talk live, Josh?
No.
I say that as if I'm like, "Ugh, jealous," and you're like, you haven't. No, I haven't. Like you, not yet, not yet, not yet. And
Maybe
so I'll
not.
always say, I didn't expect it to get so personal, but it did. With all the stories, they all get really personal for him, which is very sweet, and also says to how much he puts a lot of himself into his work in the best way.
That's why I think he would be better than Kubrick
Yeah.
because
I
he
I, I
has
don't
this
I
connection to
don't like to say better.
humanity.
I like to say
Mhm.
I will.
different. It's different. It's different. Like Anthony, something about Kubrick, something that I think really pins down. I'm gonna go on a tangent. Oh my god. Briefly. I'm gonna try and make this tangent brief. Something that I
Okay.
really think explain that kind of pinpoints Kubrick oh my, is Anthony Burgess's novel of A Clockwork Orange was originally published with 21 chapters. 21 chapters. Except for in certain parts of the UK and different time periods it didn't have 21, but 21 was very symbolic for the fact that the character of Alex, despite how violent and vulgar he was as a person, it's something that a young man, even with those kind of tendencies, could grow out of and has faith in humanity, even young men that are so violent and hateful. But Kubrick went with the version that only had 20 chapters, and that's how Clockwork Orange ends, with Alex still thinking about all the things he thinks about, being a Roman, like whipping Christ on the cross and all this sorts of things, which wasn't
Well,
his
it's
end
interesting because he did the
fantasy.
same thing to The Shining.
But
Well, similar thing to The Shining, where
But-
where Jack Torrance doesn't get his redemption like he did in the book.
Yeah.
But the difference with Clockwork Orange, it was either This American Life. I think it was This American Life, and it was a more recent episode. And they actually went back and researched the ending of A Clockwork Orange because in
really?
America it only had 20 chapters. In England it had 21. But in the original manuscript, he was completely unsure. The author was completely unsure as to whether or not to have that final chapter, and originally didn't want it in. But then when it became popular because of that final chapter, was like, it was my idea all along. But if you actually trace it back
that's
through the
cool to
manuscripts and
know.
everything, that person was totally on the fence about, should I add it, should
Anthony
I not?
Burgess.
Yeah.
That's actually super cool to know, because how I learned that was in I don't know when it was published, but I read it in the early 2000s, was a publication written, and it had an introduction by this author. Anthony Burgess is like, yeah, totally. Boom. That's what the book's supposed to mean, 21 chapters. So it's interesting to hear that he was on the fence about that. That's interesting.
I wish I could
like
remember
that.
exactly what episode that was, but I know it was a recent one.
Sly dog. That's what I meant all along.
It might have been the possum experiment. I think it was the possum experiment, episode 775, because that entire episode of This American Life is about how people are inherently good, not inherently bad. And I think the last one, it was just like a 5-minute segment at the very end of that episode, was talking about Alex.
I like that. I like that so much. Ooh, you dog, Anthony Burgess. You can change your mind, baby. It's okay. You don't have to have it all figured out right away.
That's the thing. The people we hold up as geniuses, even Mike Flanagan, he doubts himself. I guarantee it. I guarantee before his videos go out into the world, he's like, this is going to be the one that ruins me.
But
I feel like that could have been Dr. Sleep for him because, again, going into like.
Great transition.
I don't know, but he feels like.
I was going to try to do it with The Shining, but she wasn't done yet. So.
Well, the thing is about Mike Flanagan, he feels, and this is part of why he's so endearing to horror fans.
Emma will
Besides,
never let
as
me
as
transition.
somebody who's a creator, I feel like he's one of the first people to admit that he has doubt.
Totally. He's so human. Like, he's so normal. And again, I feel like he's such an empathetic person. He's got to be one of those people that's just highly, like, emotionally intelligent. It seems like he understands people so well. And I feel like that, again, is why he would be better than Stanley Kubrick and why he nailed
Oh my
Dr.
God!
Sleep.
Why do we have to compare him
Because-
to Stanley Kubrick?
Because he
Justine?
did
Why
Dr.
can't he just be
Sleep.
different?
Because he did Dr. Sleep,
But
obviously.
he loved
It's-
The Shining. That's why he makes such a big deal of it in the end.
You guys
He
want
loves
to talk about
Stephen
Dr.
King.
Sleep?
Let's talk
Dr.
about
Sleep.
I have a lot to say about
I'm
Dr.
trying
Sleep,
to.
but I'll save it. I'll save it.
No,
I just don't like saying that one.
You're not
it's
saying
totally
it,
valid.
Emma, I
It's
am.
totally valid. I know you are. I just want to say, as a collective, as a podcast, as an episode, I personally, I like to just say they're very different and they have different messages and feelings about humanity. But I don't like to say one is better than the other. I don't like saying that about a lot of things. Like Crystal's with.
That's okay.
I always do this
I'm
to Crystal.
I'm
Josh.
very
Always.
Crystal's with me on
decisive.
this in the sense that's
I
why I
always
don't
get
like
dragged
rating
in.
things very often, because they just feel different. They're a different movie or a different vibe or a different creator.
That's fair.
I don't like saying one thing is better than the other. It's just so different.
Unless
So
it's
that's
Ethan
why-
Hawke.
Oh my God. Fucking 5 stars, number
Yeah.
1.
I've never been quiet about this. I've always stated that I thought Dr. Sleep was better than The Shining. And I know that's like a controversial topic, but that is something
Nothing's
I've always
controversial,
stated.
dude.
And I've always, it seems like tonight, it's a lot of controversy coming out of my mouth.
Not
But-
controversy. I'm just making
I know,
a
you're just-
different vibe.
Yes. Dr. Sleep, I think was done better for the source material. And I think at the same time, he had to connect it to The Shining because The Shining is beloved. I don't
He
hate The Shining.
wanted to
I think that
connect to Shining. He wanted to. He made a big statement about it.
yeah, and he had to. You can't make a sequel and not connect it to the original. Like,
No, he wanted to because he loved it so much. But he,
I'm not
so
speaking for
have you?
Flanagan. I know that he loved it. I'm talking about for me, like what I'm saying about Doctor Sleep is the film to me was better than The Shining. And on top of that, because he had to connect it to The Shining, he was accomplishing something that I've never
Because he
seen done before.
wanted to connect it to The Shining.
Yes,
No, but
I'm
I think
not.
Justine's also saying it was
God.
essential. Like anyone who
It was
picked up this
essential
project, Flanagan or not, it's essential to pull it back to
because
the
The
most
Shining was so
iconic
good.
horror movie of Stephen King's collection, even
Right.
though it's not book accurate completely.
Right. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Yes. It's something that's so difficult to do because there's a lot of hatred for sequels, especially long distance sequels with that many years between them and over something where he loves Stephen King. That's one of his heroes. And he's going to adapt his work. He wants to make him happy. And Stephen King is well known for not liking The Shining. So can you imagine picking up that project? I'm sure at that moment, that's what I was talking about earlier. He probably thought this was going to be the film that sunk him.
Yeah,
That
Can I
what
talk about that
done.
a little bit?
Yeah.
yeah.
So Mike Flanagan actually heard about this project before he actually started being a part of it. He's like, I don't envy the poor soul that does that project. And not knowing that poor soul was going to be himself.
Yeah.
And the thing about The Shining and the book and the novel, like I also love The Shining and I love Stephen King and so does my mom, and she read Doctor Sleep and loved it and gave me the book and I had to read it. So Mike Flanagan really took into account before he even signed up for the project the fact that Stephen King's not liked a few adaptations of his work, but never has been as vocal as with The Shining. He felt like that was because it was such a personal book to him, a personal story that he felt wasn't told in the right way. And a lot of that was that Jack Torrance doesn't get his redemption in the third act that he does in the book, where he lets Danny go in the boiler room. And also, a lot of fans will mention how Jack Nicholson is fantastic as Jack Torrance. But Jack Torrance, as you read The Shining, slowly descends into madness as we already feel like there's something wrong with that guy when we start with The
Yeah.
Shining in the movie. So the
Yeah, it's
fact
very
that
much implied.
yes, and so the fact that Stephen King felt to write a sequel to this book after so much time, Mike Flanagan took that to heart and internalized it personally as well. And even though he had already done Gerald's Game, he had never talked to or met Stephen King. When he wrote the script for Dr. Sleep, the studio had already approved it. But he sent it to Stephen King, and he knew if Stephen King doesn't approve of my script, I'm not going to do it. Just my personal honor, my personal feelings about this. And it's very faithful to the book of Dr. Sleep until the third act. Because in the third act, everything takes very much place in Overlook Hotel, which in the book of The Shining into Dr. Sleep is gone. It burned down in the book of The Shining. It now has housing developments on it. The soul, the essence of Jack Torrance is very much a part of it. So it really is very faithful to the book, to both stories. And I think that it is amazing how much he paid so much homage to the original work of The Shining and Dr. Sleep from Stephen King's perspective, and also paid so much homage to Stanley Kubrick's original film, which is amazing. He sent the script to Stephen King, and Stephen King read like part of it. He's like, "Oh, my son's getting married. Who's getting married?" Yeah, and he's like, "Hey, I'll read the end of it." Flanagan was like, all the stuff that you're not gonna like and possibly hate is in the next half. So he's just like sweating, waiting for Stephen King to get back from the wedding and then read it. And then Stephen King loved it and all that stuff. McGregor, and how The Shining is about addiction for Stephen King, and then Dr. Sleep is about recovery. And Ewan McGregor, who also at the time when he was playing Danny Torrance, had been in recovery for 5 years. And there's like this the moment where I'm actually saying it now. Look at me lie. The moment where Hugh McGregor is playing Danny, going into the bar where his dad is the bartender, like Floyd was,
Mirroring
and
that
having
scene.
that conversation. It's an emotional
Ewan.
moment for Ewan McGregor, Mike Flanagan, and Stephen King. It's just such an
Mhm.
amazing film that doesn't get enough credit because it's a sequel to The Shining.
Yeah.
It's so smart that they did tie it back to the Overlook. And it's so smart that King saw why that was so essential, because that
Mhm.
I think is what got people's butts in the theater is we're going back to the spooky place. They don't give a
Yeah.
shit about the story. They're watching the trailer and they're like, yeah, I want to
Dare to
see the
go
girl come
back.
out of the tub. I want to see the twins. I want to see the blood. And that's how you get people in the
Ugh.
theater. And then you give
Yeah.
them this beautiful story. I am so attached to Rose the Hat. She is my favorite villain. And I just wanted to show you guys my friend, A Toast to the Ghosts on TikTok, made me a custom Rose the Hat little poster in her
Gorgeous.
style.
One.
She does all kinds of movies in these minimalist forms. And she was like, can I send you one? And I was like, I love all the ones that you do, but I would just die for a Rose the Hat. And she made me a custom one.
Love
It's
it.
so
Amazing.
cool.
People
I
that
hope she
can
sells
make it.
prints on her site, because I think
Yeah.
it's
You
so
have
cool.
to
Everyone should
send
have
us
it.
her link. I really admire people that can really capture something in a minimalist way. That seems so hard to me.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
show you one more and then I'm going to save the rest. She sent me a bunch of stickers from different movies. And you get it immediately. You know
Yeah.
exactly what it is.
Right
They have no
away.
Yeah.
faces. It's
That's so
just
cool.
perfect. Meryl and
Speaking
the
of a
kids.
Patreon, for those of you in Twitch and those of you watching on YouTube, we do have a Patreon if you want to support the podcast. The links are in the description below. Yeah, this film managed to be super scary in a way that is on paper, I think, not scary. Like it's hard to
Mhm.
hear that and think that's scary, but they made these villains vicious and cool, but so vicious. Like the scene with the little baseball boy.
That's
What is
It's
scarier
scary in
than a
the book.
little kid just like screaming, please no, and then
While
he
they
actually
shred
fucking
him.
dies?
yeah.
Oh yeah.
They
Yeah, it
said
was
that was so hard to film. They said that afterwards they had to like take a second. And apparently the little boy just jumped up and was like, "I'm good." But all the
Yeah.
other actors were like traumatized by what just
Yeah.
happened. Which is sad. It's a
I
very
love
yeah.
hearing a
pleasant
good story
scene,
about a kid having a good time on a horror movie
right?
set. That makes me
Yeah.
so happy.
So Jacob Tremblay is that actor that plays the boy in Doctor Sleep, and he was also the boy in Before I Wake, which is another Mike Flanagan film that we'll talk about in a little bit. He's a great little actor. Like he's
Very
amazing,
good.
and he was
Yeah.
so good that he impacted all of those actors who were murdering him on set.
Yeah.
Basically.
Slaughtering his little body.
Yeah,
Isn't
but
that
Rebecca
exciting for the
Ferguson
book?
delivered. She
She
delivered.
does. Yeah. She's really
I
good.
so much
Mhm.
as somebody this is not usually me because as again I don't read a lot of fiction. I had read the book before or like this was even really that much of a movie and so I was like so pressed as who could play someone that sexy, someone that cool as Rose the Hat and I was blown away by the performance that she does.
Yeah,
It's an
Rebecca
amazing
Ferguson is queen.
perfect casting, perfect acting. I was amazed.
And Kylie Curran stole every scene she was in. That's Abra. She was fantastic too. She was
Mhm.
there was just a lot of talent on that set. Like every actor played their character perfectly. I think Doctor Sleep gets slept on. I think more people need
Yeah.
to go see it and check it
I
out
agree.
because I think too many people just skipped out on this one. I don't know why.
I think a lot of people were traumatized by The Shining, and seeing it not when it came out because I wasn't born yet, like
Yeah.
seeing it at the point I don't even remember when I saw it for the first time. It was either
Did it come out in
late in high
1980?
school, it was 80, but I saw it probably late in high school, and then I was like immediately interested in it, and then I saw the made for TV version because I wanted more and loved that as well. But
Mick
you know,
Garris directing, yeah.
and then I remember after college, when I moved in with my first roommate in New York, they had gotten an HD version of The Shining, and we were like, "Ooh!" It was like early Blu-ray days, like when Blu-rays like were first coming out, and all they had was like Terminator 3. they finally had like Shining release, and I remember watching that, and then we started watching it every Halloween. It just became this like ritual thing. But that is a very different story from the people who saw it in the theater and were like, it was the most horrifying thing they had seen, and it really
Yeah.
left some trauma with people. And that might be part of the reason why people don't come back to Dr. Sleep, because they're like, I'm good, I saw it. I had to convince Courtney to watch Dr. Sleep
Did
over
she
the
see
course
it?
of like 2 years, and now once she found out it was Flanagan after Haunting of Hill House and like all of that stuff. Oh no, because
She
it
didn't
came
see it
out
in theaters,
after.
did she?
No, I saw it in the theater opening weekend, I think, and then I came
It
No, I
was
immediately
mean
back.
The
right during
Shining. When did
COVID.
she just see The Shining?
Oh, The Shining? I don't know. It must
I
have been
saw
high
The
school.
Shining before 10 on a TV screen. And the thing that really stuck with me was the woman in room 237. That was the thing that really freaked me out more than anything else. And also, for anybody that has, and not to get too personal, but anybody that has at least seen parents fight intensely, the scene where, give me the bat, Wendy, give me the bat. There's something so realistic about that scene.
It's the axe in the door through the maze for me. That's the chasing with the axe at the very end. That is the one that just like really hits me. The little
Yeah.
twins,
It's a
the
steady
woman
cam
in
shot
the.
for me.
Oh yeah.
What
Because
was it
that
for you,
leads right to
Justine?
237, the steady cam where he's on the bike, on the trike. He's going through the hallways.
It's
It
so
was
unsettling.
It was when Jack goes in there and she's this beautiful woman walking out of the tub. And then it wasn't, all that stuff was scary, right? It was the slow laughing and slow moving towards him as he's just horrified. That she's just so like, yes, just that. It was the slow, oh my God, I was afraid of my bathtub.
And
then they brought her back. In Dr.
the
Sleep.
They
scene
brought her
they brought her
back.
back.
Yeah.
There were a couple of things that really make that movie terrifying. The Steadicam is one, and I have a story about that. But the other thing I saw in a breakdown on YouTube or something is that when Jack is coming up the stairs and they give him the bat, they keep his eyes in the exact same place in the frame, so the camera is tracking with his
No wonder
movements,
why
and his
that's so
eyes stay in the same
scary.
place, and it's so unsettling. I ran into a guy in a bar one time in New York City, and I think it was like someone invited me to like rap for some day of filming or something, and the guy who was there told me this story about how he had invented the Steadicam like right before that movie, made out of PVC piping, because nothing like that had ever been done before. And he basically showed it to the cinematographer who he knew was going to be making this film, and brought it over to his house and was like, I've been like working on this contraption. And they together figured out how to use it for The Shining so that they could get those super steady dolly shots, but without a dolly, without having like miles and miles of track that you have to like keep out of the.
We discussed that a little bit in the cinematography episode. I think we mentioned how it was done like on a
With
wheelchair.
Brian.
Yeah. So Emma, you mentioned earlier about how he felt sad for whoever was going to pick up and do Dr. Sleep, like that poor soul, and how he ended up doing that one. But he actually picked up a film, Gerald's Game, which was never expected to ever be adapted into a film. It was the impossible book to adapt, and pulled it off.
Mike Flanagan had said that when he was making it, like, if I never get to make anything again, at least I got to make Gerald's Game. And I like Gerald's Game enough. I'm like, her? Really? Her? He does so many amazing things. It's not a bad movie, but I'm just.
It's
so good.
So good.
So all right.
I was really
Ooh, I just
enjoying
got the eyes
rewatching it.
from like 3 people. Oh my God.
Wow. I mean, that book, like Justine was just saying, impossible for I think anybody to have pulled that off in a movie form. The fact that he did such an amazing job, how that story is, it's perfection. He's incredible. I love him.
So I
And
never saw the
Carla.
book. I never saw the book, and I never read the movie, but I also never read the book.
I never read the book either, so
I never read the book, but
Mhm.
and I watched the movie for this podcast because it was one of those movies where I was like, "Oh, cool, person strapped to a bed. I'm good." Boring.
Exactly.
Freaking moly. Like, I want to read to you my TikTok that I recorded earlier today for this episode, because I think it just like really sums up all of my feelings for this, and then I'll end up releasing it.
You could put it on your teleprompter.
I almost
Yeah.
just clicked on my teleprompter just now. Talk
Okay.
mode. If you have trouble seeing why some men are gross or remembering that no means no, check out Gerald's Game. That's how I felt after the first 15 minutes. And then I was like, oh, so this is a movie about a woman who needs men, even if they're just a memory, in order to do anything for themselves. Gross. But that wasn't the point either. Before I go on, Gerald's Game is about a woman and her husband going off to a secluded vacation house to reconnect. And Gerald has a very creepy and unsexy surprise game he wants to play where he handcuffs his wife to a bed and pretends to be a stranger who wants to take advantage against her will. Who can imagine Jesse is not into that, right? But here's the twist. After a brief argument, Gerald dies on top of her, leaving Jesse hopelessly handcuffed, arms spread wide, and no one around for miles, no one except for a hungry dog. And that's how it starts.
Yeah.
Blew my mind because I was like, oh, I know what this movie is. Oh, I
Yeah.
thought I knew what this movie. I know what this movie is. Oh no, I know what this movie is. And I was wrong like 5 times in a row.
Yeah.
It's Mike
It really
Flanagan. He
unpacks that
brings the
trauma.
emotions and the psychological unpacking of your
Yeah.
psyche. Like you're
Oh,
only left with your own psyche and your own problems to focus on.
With
After
some
yeah,
of
everyone
the
else's
and the
beautiful
bullshit is
shots.
dead.
and the foot
Oh
looking
yeah.
man, foot looking man.
Look at
This what's his name? The Moonlight
the
Man.
Moonlight Man. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
who she did not even know was real. She thought was a figment of her imagination
Which
and
is
turned
quite the
out to be
twist.
legitimately real. That he
The
was
dog was the key to knowing that. The dog was
Right, because there's the
saying
scene where the
no.
dog runs away. But
The
also
dogs are
dogs
amazing.
see ghosts. So or is it
Yeah.
cats that see ghosts? I think they all see ghosts.
I think that they did really well. First off, trigger warning for anybody who has any traumas, sexual traumas, or any SA trauma. This does have that in
Mhm.
spades. It's very impactful, and the way that it unpacks that trauma for the character throughout the film is done in such an interesting way where she's basically arguing. She has two psyches in front of her dead husband and herself. And it seems to me like they're constantly battling, like her trauma is trying to stay hidden, and she sought solace in her husband, but he ended up being abusive as well, as we all learned. But the way
In
that
a
they
different
like go
way, but
back
yes.
into the eclipse imagery,
Mm.
that was so beautifully done and traumatizing at the same time for the
Yeah.
audience. But the way that they shot it, it was so freeing at the end and beautiful. And the way that the court scene, everything wrapped up so perfectly for this character, in my opinion.
Yeah. Which is
Yeah,
That
they
is
amazing
the
because
common criticism I see where people like the ending, which I don't necessarily agree with, but that is the common thing I see about this movie is people feeling the ending with the whole courtroom thing. It
I
feels
totally understand. That's a whole vibe for people that don't like that kind of ending. It's like people who don't
yeah.
appreciate any of M. Night Shyamalan's movies or who don't like that sort of like wrap up at the end. I totally get that. My reaction to seeing the court scene at the end was like, this is really cool because I thought the movie was over. I was happy with where it was, but then I got
Yeah.
a little bit more and it was such a bizarre ending that it just felt like dessert.
She faced
Yeah.
her monster. She faced a monster for
Yeah.
once. That was like her own personal redemption.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
it's very Flanagan to have that sort of like we're completing the character, not the story. Like the
He
story
is
didn't
a
need that. The
wrong man, right?
character needed that.
Can we just also talk about Carla Gugino and how
Yes.
freaking perfect she is? Because
I
I
love her.
adore her. Me too. I absolutely love her. And she wasn't even supposed to play this role. The person that was actually casted for this role dropped out 2 weeks before they started filming, and Carla Gugino got shoved in there and
Oh my
saved the
gosh.
day. Yeah, can you imagine not even knowing you were going to be in this movie and then just bam, tossed right in? And then knocked
Holy
it right
moly.
out of the park. I can't picture anybody else playing this role. I cannot.
Me neither. And there's two Easter eggs to his other works in this film. There's the Oculus mirror, which makes up
Yeah.
the bed.
Oh, I didn't
That's
catch
the
that
The
bed
one.
headboard.
frame.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Oh,
headboard.
Mhm.
And then Midnight Mass is on
Midnight
the shelf.
Mass.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are of course really cool. And supposedly the Oculus mirror shows up in Doctor Sleep somewhere. I still haven't found it. Have you?
It's yes, it is
You did?
yes. So when they get back to the Overlook Hotel and
Uh-huh.
Danny or Ewan McGregor is walking towards the gold room, it's up on the wall to his left. It's on the right side of the wall right before he's walking into the gold room. You can see it plain
Boom.
as day. Yeah,
We're
I
gonna
noticed
put
it
a
on the
clip
second rewatch.
right
Yeah.
there.
Save the clip to give to you
Do I have
because I
to
wanted
pretend
to
to watch
mention
it?
that.
Like, Oh, that's so cool.
No, no.
Wow.
But I went back through and I watched every single clip that has the Oculus mirror in it, and I have a whole list. So
Oh, that's
to
cool.
make sure.
I just like in Gerald's game, like they literally throw the book at the camera. Like they throw Midnight Mass at you, and knowing
Yeah.
like what we know now, it's like getting hit over the head with like, I am gonna make this someday.
So Hush, of course, we know that Kate Siegel's character is the writer of Midnight Mass. Right? That film is one of my favorite home invasion films.
It's
too.
really good. I watched it for this podcast as well. I hadn't seen it, and someone had told me, they had just texted me the word hush, and I was like, cool. Now in
Hush you.
retrospect, I'm like, oh, you were recommending a movie.
Oh no!
Exactly.
How long have you secretly judged that person since then?
Oh, every day of my life. Yeah, hush. But
Oh man.
I was really surprised because this movie doesn't have the monologues. It doesn't have the character development. It's definitely pre his finding that like depth in his work, or having the allowance to have that depth in his work, however it shook out. But it still hits so freaking hard, and
Yeah.
you still get everything you need from the film in order to rank it high in a home invasion film.
It's interesting you say that because they intentionally wanted to create this film to challenge themselves, his wife and him. That was their whole goal, was to challenge themselves to do something outside of what they usually would do, and to write even more challenge into it by having her not really talk at all.
The thing I love most about it,
Yeah.
not only is the representation of having someone who has hearing loss, but also the structure in which they built it is that she has a billion ideas, and she gets punished equally for every idea that she has. And so
Yeah.
she'll takes one step forward and gets beaten one step back the entire film, to the point where they're both laying bleeding on the floor, and you're like, this is going to be a tragedy.
Samantha Sloyan is in this one as well, and it's funny because she's reading Midnight Mass, right? Holding the book up, and then ends up being Bev in Midnight Mass, which I think is awesome.
Flanagan originally intended it for a book.
I didn't know that. I thought it was always supposed to be a show.
I wonder if
Movie
they'll
on
come
its
out
own.
with a book, because a book can go into so much more detail, even with 13 episodes or however
Yeah.
many it had.
I could always do with more Midnight Mass.
Yeah.
What's his face? John Gallagher Jr. He plays the masked killer in Hush. I love him. He was in 10 Cloverfield Lane, which is one of my favorite.
Yeah,
And he's such a good villain in this. He's sadistic.
Yes.
he really is. I have like a small project going on with him and his crew, which I probably can't say too much about, but he's like friends with Aubrey Plaza and a bunch of other people, and we have something that we're trying to
Those
get
are
off the
two big
ground.
crushes. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of
Gosh.
people. So what I can say is that my friend Seth has this show that just came out called Little Demon. It's a cartoon show, and he worked on it with the DeVitos, Danny DeVito and his kids. It looks so good. I haven't seen any of it yet, but I know he has been like working on it for like years, and it finally got released, and it looks so good. It's the same little theater company for children in Delaware. He grew up in Delaware,
Mm.
and it was the same year that Aubrey Plaza was there, that John Gallagher Jr. was there, a bunch of other names.
I'm in love with both of those people.
Neil, what's his name, who is the bad guy in the all-female Ghostbusters movie? Just a bunch
I
of people.
love that guy. He's so cool.
He's funny.
Yeah, Johnny Powell. Yeah, a whole bunch of people. And so there's a project that they're all working on. And because we're connected through Seth, we're like maybe possibly going to help produce it. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Might have to
I'm
cut
not
all of that
jealous
out.
at all. I love Aubrey Plaza, and I love
John Gallagher Jr. is so good. 10 Cloverfield Lane was such a surprise.
ever since the newsroom.
Before Hush, after Gerald's game, but we're gonna come back to Hill House, was Ouija, or do you say Ouija? Like, I grew up saying Ouija. Everyone in New Jersey said Ouija. It's spelled Ouija. I don't freaking know. Origin
I
of
always said
Evil.
Ouija.
I've heard it can be both.
I always thought it was Ouija. The squeegee board, Origin of Evil. That was again, he takes a sequel, right? Well, I guess it's a prequel, isn't it?
Prequel.
But he takes a second film and makes it better than the first.
Did you
so
hear how we
much
got
better.
that film?
No, I know nothing about it other than like
I
my
actually know
wife was
that-
like,
that- I
watch
actually
this, and
know
I was
that.
like,
I don't know much, but I know this one. Jason Blum went to Mike Flanagan like, ooh, will you make Origin 2 for me? And Mike Flanagan's like, I'm not interested in that kind of project. It's not for me. And Jason Blum's like, what's a project that you've always wanted to do that you just can't get off the ground? You can't do it. Mike Flanagan goes, well, I want to make a movie about a single mom in the 60s and raising her kids and supernatural stuff going on. He's like, great. Do that movie, but make it Ouija Origin of Evil.
That's awesome.
It worked too. It's better than the first one, I think. In my opinion.
Big question is this your favorite Ouija board movie?
Yes.
I have a thing for Witchboard because I have a thing for Tawny Katane.
This is definitely my favorite.
There's a little indie film called I Am Zozo that was like shot on 16mm film. There's something inherently scary about things that are shot on like lousy film stock. And it's found footage vibe, but not real. I guess it's more avant-garde voyeuristic kind of feel because it's not really found footage, I don't think, but it has that vibe to it. Really scary. I don't think it's better than this movie. Definitely the script is not better than this. Script is like whatever. It's like people play the game and like Zozo comes and like bad stuff happens, but it's actually really scary. So they're like there.
That reminds me, you haven't opened up to the full disgusting, lovely, low quality world of SOV.
I know. I need direct recommendations. And part of me too is like, because I own all of these VHS tapes.
That's your girl.
I'm like, I want that experience. I want the straight.
I'm over here.
I was really battling how to point down in this corner. Like, there we go.
Yeah.
That's your girl.
But I want that experience of the SOV, but like actually have the V. You know what I mean?
That gets expensive.
The V's in it. Elizabeth Reeser, right? She was the mom. Yeah, she was the sister, the older sister, or the middle sister, maybe. Is Kate Siegel the older sister? I don't even remember now.
I can't remember who plays what.
But she was in the car. She was in that car scene, man. Like the greatest jump scare in television. This show was so scary. Like I never will stop saying that. Like the scariest.
The funny thing about Haunting of Hill House is that I found it absolutely terrifying, and my wife finds it relaxing. Like she watches it, that's like her comfort movie, which I totally get because The Ring is my comfort movie. Like if I'm sick and I want to just like feel better about myself, I watch The Ring. Yeah. I call it warm blanket horror. And this is her like warm blanket horror is The Haunting of Hill House. She's seen it probably 10, 15 times.
Yeah, I can relate with that, honestly. I still look for all the hidden ghosts in the background. It's a game that I play.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me how all the siblings are a representation of a different stage of grief. And it's so emotional. I don't find it scary, but I don't find it exactly a comfort thing, but it's so good and it's very emotional. That's why I had to be in a certain mood to watch it.
For me, the whole thing came together with the Funeral Parlor episode. I was in it before then, but that is what put it at the top of my like all-time favorite horror properties ever, was that particular episode. Not only because I'm a cinematographer and my first indie film that I made, I did lots of long extended shots in, and I just really that style of being present and not being able to look away. I love that like the huge majority of that episode is all one shot. But then also they nailed the performances. If it was a play, it would be lights popping up on different sides of the stage. And they somehow did that all in one shot. They somehow got these vignettes and these different conversations and these characters on completely different paths all in this one shot. It just blows my mind. It's better than Birdman.
Episode for like everyone to get that done, as you would know, Josh, like because you've worked on a set. Like, oh my god! And it was inspired by a Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode, actually.
Whoa!
I can't remember which one because I'm not a Buffy expert, but.
Yeah, the body.
I think every ghost was also terrifying. Each person had their own like torturing entity. And the Hat Man was very much scary because I've seen the Hat Man before. So that one freaked me out. But nothing
sleep paralysis, right?
Yeah, I've had sleep paralysis. I've seen the Hat Man. It was like 3 feet tall, but I have seen that.
People see like 3 feet. Some people
Don't you have a kid? Is your kid 3 feet tall?
I did not have a kid at the time.
Oh,
I was
okay.
living in Eugene, Oregon. I was
You were
in college.
pregnant though, right?
No, not when I saw the Hat Man. No.
Oh, I thought I was
No.
gonna be an expert at Justine history. I feel so embarrassed.
No, this was when I
So
lived
did
in
I.
Eugene, Oregon, and my mattress was like on a box spring on the ground, like up against a painting on a wall, like in a studio apartment. And my dog was sleeping on a bed near me, and I woke up in the middle of the night, but I was paralyzed and I couldn't move. There were 3 figures at the end of my bed. And like what would have looked like really tall people if my bed wasn't just on the floor, were only like 3 feet tall people. It was so scary.
Sure, yeah.
Well, yeah.
Sounds
Like
like
waking up to
aliens.
aliens at the end of your bed. Yeah, it was scary. I was like trying to make noises to wake my dog up, and she just was completely unresponsive. It was terrifying.
Ugh.
But this Hat Man in this show is really scary. He's so tall, so imposing, and he shows up anywhere, not just when they're at the house, in the alleyways, anywhere. But nothing was as scary as the butt neck lady. And then the
Ooh.
resolution around that.
Oh my god! Just
Yeah.
you had no idea it was coming at all.
No.
Incredible.
And then the way it comes, like with her dropping
Yeah,
through every moment that you've already witnessed, but from
and your
almost like a
jaw
different
drops
perspective. Yeah, you're
every
just
time
like,
it happens.
no. Yeah. Oh, it's so intense.
Oh,
What a
and
great
then so
resolution.
many scary things in this. Even the depiction of
Mhm.
sleep paralysis was like the best I've ever seen it done.
Yeah,
I agree.
100%.
This was Victoria Pedretti's first role too, and she did such an amazing job.
Wow.
She got cast through a video, like just a video that she submitted. She didn't even go to an audition or anything. She just sent in
Wow.
a video and got the job.
We're
Yeah,
living in the
she's
future.
And she's
she's
got
very
the best
talented.
role, the most pivotal
Yeah,
role to
she
perform
really
the
does.
best.
Yeah.
Like,
Is that
she
Nell?
had to.
No.
Yeah. Michael Huesman is in it, who's like also a big Christian of mine. He's one of the brothers. He's like the older, more doesn't believe in any of it kind of brother.
The author.
Steven?
Yeah, Stephen Crane. He was in Game of Thrones. He was the guy that was recast from the original actor.
And how freaking cute is Paxton Singleton?
He's adorable. Yeah.
Adorable with those little glasses. Get out of here. He's the cutest kid ever. I was just like, can we go back in time and you're my best friend?
He seems like he should be in a Life commercial. Mikey likes it, Life cereal. It's
Yeah.
just that look.
I think it was
Little
Haunting
goober.
of Hill House that showed me, really highlighted how much Flanagan sticks to the same people.
He's got that
Creed.
working family. And
Yeah.
Mike Figuinari was not part of this, which is surprising because he's his #1 cinematographer usually.
So in
But we should get back on
2016, Michael Fimignari, he did 3 films with Mike Flanagan. So it was Ouija, Origin of Evil, and Hush, which we already talked about, but also Before I Wake, which
Mm.
is another one that I think gets slept on.
I don't even know that
or
one.
Gets put down more than it should, because it's
Well,
also
Mike
a
Flanagan
fantastic story of
thinks
grief. I don't think it's that bad. I think it's beautiful.
The way he
And-
phrased it is the things that people don't like about it are the things I love about it, which doesn't mean he thinks it's his worst necessarily, but a lot of things didn't go quite right. That's why Hush, he felt, redirected his career in the right direction because he went more simple after Before I Wake.
I don't know. I liked Before I Wake. I think it told a really interesting story in a spooky way. And the moments that were beautiful were really beautiful, with like butterflies coming from the Christmas lights and from the kids dreaming, because he hadn't really had a Christmas like that before. So it was really magical to him. So of course, when he went to bed, he dreamt some magical, beautiful things. But as you know, it's a scary movie. So his dreams turned to nightmares, which turned to nightmares in real life for the parents who were adopting him. Again, this is Jacob Tremblay. Yeah, that was the boy in it. I don't want to give too much away because you haven't seen it
Yeah.
yet.
No, I'm looking at some of the stills and I regret it.
It
It's
is
all
really
right.
pretty.
Yeah,
It's
it
a
A
looks
lot
pretty
of
film.
Very beautiful.
butterflies.
Yeah.
it looks super cool. And it
It's
looks
alright.
like, what year did this come out? 2016.
2016 as well, yeah.
From the still images and from the synopsis of it, it sounds like more of 2008 to 2010 type movie.
Well,
So I
was
wonder if
It was
that's
filmed
big
what
very
the,
Netflix.
early.
It was. They
was
ran
what?
It was
into a
filmed-
lot of issues.
It was filmed a
Isn't that,
couple
yeah,
years
that's the one that
prior.
was released way
It was like
later
a
than it was
cursed
shot.
movie. Yeah, he like tried to get it released, and then the production company went bankrupt, so they put it on hold, and then it kept just getting put on hold. So it was actually filmed years before it got released.
Did he
So maybe
shoot
that's
it
why it
before or
has a bit of
after
an over.
Oculus?
It was after Oculus, because Oculus
thought it
was
was
one of
after.
his first, because it was based off of one of his shorts.
That's where he got
It
his
was.
work family.
Yeah, Oculus, man. I think this is another one that I think people just don't like, and I don't understand
Mhm.
why, because I love it.
Right.
I think it's so cool.
It's
I thought it
very
was a
good.
cool story, and it had some really effective moments. Like Karen Gillian is really great. I love her. I hope she works with Mike Flanagan again. She's super Marvel right now.
We watch Oculus because I don't remember particularly liking it when I first saw it when it first came out.
Yeah,
Okay.
I love it. I love the
It's not
light
my
bulb
favorite.
scene where things like trick you. That
Yeah.
light bulb scene was effective. Or like the mom in the mirror and the way she smiled and the way that they made their eyes mirrored. I thought those were
Yeah.
really cool details.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's my least favorite of anything Mike Flanagan has put out, but I still really like it because I don't dislike anything he's made. But it
Fact.
is down. It's down near at the bottom of my list for sure. But
I agree
I
with
think,
that.
yeah, he's gotten better ever since. Honestly, he's just.
Would you put the firefighter combat challenge above Oculus? What
I
is
don't know.
this? I'm
Oh,
on his
I haven't seen that
IMDb
one.
and the Firefighter Combat Challenge TV series.
Yeah, I haven't seen
Mike,
don't know.
those.
this is so different from everything else.
I have no
Sometimes
idea
I
what that
can't
is.
find. Yeah, I haven't been able to find some of his work, his like really old work. I haven't been able to find it, but
He's done
Yeah,
a lot
like
of TV editing.
a lot of TV editing. But the mirror from Oculus, this is the mirror that he puts in like a bunch of his other projects. We talked about it for Doctor Sleep,
yeah.
the headboard in Gerald's game, as we mentioned, but it's also in Midnight Mass. It's on the stage when they're in the rec center and Riley's in like the AA meetings or whatever. It's also in Haunting
Mhm.
of Hill House in episode 1. You can see it when Nell is like dancing through the house and it's all decrepit. It's up on the wall, and it's in Origin of Evil too, in the basement. He's put it in like
Mhm.
so many of his projects. I love looking for it. Every time he puts something
I
out, I'm
love
like,
that.
where's the mirror? I need to find
Isn't
it.
that so great? Like, I hope he's
It's so
building a
fun.
universe, and
He is.
I want it to be like Stephen King, how he has a universe and everything leads back to like Dark Tower or these
Yeah.
otherworldly kind of entities and how they seep into our world and they're all connected. I
Mhm.
want that so bad for Mike Flanagan's universe because I love his
A lot
stuff
of
so
people
much
make
and
that
he's so
connection
similar.
of Stephen King
He
and
said that.
Mike Flanagan, besides the project that they are linked story-wise,
Mhm.
in manner of their focus on character and empathy on
Mhm.
humanity.
Yeah,
And they're so
and
cute when they sit next to each other and they like. And Mike Flanagan's like, I learned how to be brave by reading Stephen King books. And Stephen King just puts his hands to his chest. It's so cute.
I feel like
Flanagan has talked
if
about that though.
if Stephen King never made films, like he never actually touched the filmmaking world,
Thank God he did because Maximum Overdrive is a blast.
I would say Mike Flanagan is the Stephen King of filmmaking, but he has touched a
Not
film.
compared to
and it's
Maximum
not like
Overdrive.
Mike Flanagan
It's
at all.
own thing.
Yeah.
I love it. Every
Uh,
second, great soundtrack.
So now we can get into your favorite, Emma. His first.
Mike Flanagan has improved in every aspect with every project he does, like a lot of creators, and really hones in on your characters. Absentia, I didn't know who Mike Flanagan was, and I was with somebody, and the cover looks cheesy. It looks like a cheesy low budget movie, which is a low budget movie, but it is not cheesy. About the woman with a claw against, and it looks like she's being dragged. Let's put something random on. Maybe it'll be good. And it was amazing. I was so blown away
good.
by Absentia. I didn't follow Mike Flanagan after this. It wasn't until I think Haunting a Hill House where I went looking into his IMDb or Letterboxd or whatever. I'm like,
Yeah.
he made Absentia? Like, holy shit. I think one of the things that really struck with me, it's a movie about two characters. I don't even have to go into detail their relation. Let's say there's a lot of history between these two characters talking to each other. There's been time between them, and one is making a comment about the other one's situation. The other one is like, hey, how dare you say about my, in a positive way, like, hey, your situation. And the other character is like, how dare you say anything about my situation, because they've had all these feelings of guilt of how the other person would feel, blah, blah, blah. The emotions and the depth that you can see with the actors, with the script as a human being, even if it's a situation you've never come even close to, you understand so deeply what both characters are going through and all the hurt that are so separate from each other. It's hurt that isn't even connected, but they've been connected to each other in the past, and it is mind-blowing. Absentia has its little flaws because it's a very low budget movie. It's an amazing movie. Haunting Season, I think you'd really like it. It is an
To m-
amazing film. It really has all the heart that Mike Flanagan brings to every other project, and everything
Mhm.
else, more of the technical details, plot flow comes later. But the heart of Mike Flanagan is in his first feature length film.
It sounds like it goes back to what I was saying in the beginning of, like, you can literally climb his
Mhm.
IMDb like a ladder. Like Absentia like proves what he can do. Oculus is a step up. Hush is a step up. I don't know. Oh yeah, we talked
Absentia
about
proves
before.
the
I wake.
heart of Mike Flanagan. There's the heart in that. It's so amazing, and I
It's
really am
also got
impressed
some
with the actors.
it's folk horror too at the same time, which is really cool because it's just an interesting telling, and I think they
In a
do a
more
good
urban
job.
setting too. It's like
Yeah, in
folk
an
horror in an
urban
urban
setting.
setting.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I
Is it
think the
Los
acting is
Angeles?
phenomenal. You also have, I don't know, you also have Doug Jones in it, which is great.
I don't know
His
how we got
own
Doug Jones. This is so low budget for those that haven't seen it, and it has like actors that you don't even recognize. And how did he get Doug Jones?
and Doug
Because he's
Jones.
awesome. Because he's
He's
awesome is the
amazing.
answer.
Yeah. This is to me a shining example of what a film could be even with a low budget because he nails it on some
Mhm.
very scary moments. And for someone like me who like needs creature payoff usually, I don't need
Mhm.
it in this film. This film is scary without it. He does a good job of making it
We see a bit of the
scary.
creature, but not like as just it's not the same payoff that some people might expect. But
Yeah.
so much else of it is there that it's so worth it.
Yeah.
It's a gem.
Yeah.
It's a gem. I wish I was smart enough after I'd seen that movie and was blown more than I expected, just blown away by it. I'm like, let me write down the name of the person that wrote the movie or directed the movie, both Mike Flanagan. I didn't. And then it wasn't again until Haunting of Hill House. I'm like, whoa, he made Absentia? That makes so much
Mhm.
sense. So much sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, really great at telling stories through characters because it's character focused, just like all of his other works. So we're gonna have Haunting Season's credentials, his links,
Ooh, my
all his
credentials.
little. We're gonna we're gonna have Haunting Season's links in the description below, so you guys can check out some of his other stuff and follow him on TikTok. You can also follow Let Us In podcast on TikTok. We each all have our own TikToks as well. It's our same names that we introduce ourselves as every episode. If you are watching this on YouTube, that means you missed out on our Twitch live possibly. So don't miss out at our behind the scenes filming on Twitch.
Yeah,
Go
where Emma
subscribe.
dunks out every few moments.
Yeah.
That's
You
not
can
typical.
see
That's never happened
all
before.
of the chaos all
Never
at
happened
once
before.
live on Twitch.
Also,
And if you really want
what
to
were
support,
the projects you specifically wanted to have people check out Haunting Season? Was there anything specific you wanted to say, hey, check out this out on Discovery Plus?
Oh yeah, My Beautiful Stutter was the documentary that I worked on that's on Discovery Plus right now, and it's a really beautiful watch and it's a really eye-opening watch. Thanks for remembering that.
awesome. And if you guys really want to support the podcast, you can join our Patreon. You'll get access to movie nights on Discord, which is super fun. But you can join our Patreon and get access to our Discord where you can vote on content, you can vote on AMAs, put some input into what we do here on the podcast. And you can
But you will
also get
suffer
merch.
me whenever I'm feeling extra thirsty. Some stuff will be in there. I'm sorry.
Thank you guys. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.